Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the APM V-Connect product webinar titled IMO 2021 Cyber Requirements. Are you ready? This session is presented by Inmarsat and hosted by the Asia Pacific Maritime Show. I'm Dang and I will be the MC for this session today. Before we begin the session proper, I would like to encourage everyone to send in questions relating to this session via the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be addressed towards the end of the presentation during the Q&A segment. Now, today's topic is about the IMO 2021 cyber requirements. We are fortunate to have three industry leaders today to share their insights into the topic. Without further ado, let me introduce the moderator for today, Mr. Mark Warner, Marketing and PR Director of Inmarsat Maritime. Having joined Inmarsat in September 2016, Mark takes full responsibility for maritime marketing and PR activities. He has over 20 years of experience in the maritime industry and have an extensive track record in digital platform development and marketing program creation. Welcome, Mark, on screen. Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Xiao. So welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some. Thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. I think you'll all know that this topic is very hot at the moment. There's lots of talk around cybersecurity and the IMO 2021. So us at Inmarsat feel that this is and just talking to our ship owners through our partners and our clients as well, there's lots of questions around IMO 2021. So we feel that this webinar is perfectly timed, and hopefully over the next 45 minutes to an hour, we will give you a kind of education of what you need to do in terms of compliance to IMO 2021. So Richard, could I see the next slide, please? I'm just waiting for the next slide to come up. Excellent. Good. Okay, so I've already been introduced, so let me introduce you the people who are really going to do the work through this session. So in the middle there is Laurie Eve, who's Director of Retail for Inmarsat. Laurie has many years experience both in the UK military, but also working as security contractors and in security consultancy. Laurie also been on board the vessels and has first-hand experience of being on the vessels and securing a vessel. So an excellent speaker, and he's obviously also been heavily involved in our product development and bringing our fleet secure portfolio to market. And then on the right hand side we have Richard. Richard is Senior Manager Sector Development for Inmarsat. I think in the Asian region he's worked for many shipping companies as IT manager, and is best placed to kind of look at what you need to do, and then certainly in implementing best practice around cyber as well, with many years experience of implementing IT best practices in shipping companies. So again, very knowledgeable and very educated on this topic too. Okay, so next slide, please. So we're going to just run you through, and Laurie will give you an overview of the IMO 2021 overview. And then the ship owner, ship manager, what do they need to do for internal preparation? Then we'll have a look at the fleet secure portfolio. And then we've got some real life case studies. Obviously that brings it home in terms of what can be done and what's being done by shipping companies across the world. And then really a kind of takeaway for you, what to do next. How do you get prepared for IMO 2021? And that will be our kind of final topic. And then we'll go to a question and answer format where I'll be asking the questions. And as said at the start of the presentation, we welcome questions from you. and we would, you know, and expect to be audience participation. Okay, so on this slide, which is quite alarming, I'm going to hand over to Laurie. So for Laurie to talk you through, you know, what we're seeing and what the IMO's done. So Laurie, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to talk about IMO 2021. I'll give a brief overview of what it is. I'm going to summarise the key documents and what they mean, before Richard will talk more about what ship owners, ship managers have to do with them. And at the end of the session, we're aiming to give a pragmatic approach to planning and getting compliant. So let's start with looking at the key documents associated with IMO 2021. First of all, we have MSc File Cert 3, which was published July 2017. And these guidelines provide high-level recommendations on maritime cyber risk management to safeguard shipping from cyber threats and vulnerabilities. The guidelines also include functional elements that support effective cyber risk management, and these are namely identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And these guidelines are recommendatory. They provide an excellent introduction, though, to cyber threats in the maritime domain. Next, we have the guidelines on cybersecurity on board ships, version 3. And the aim of this document is to offer guidance to ship owners and operators on procedures and actions to maintain the security of cyber systems in the company and on board ships. They're not intended to provide a basis for external auditing, but it's a really useful document which also draws on the NIST framework to assist companies with their risk management. And then onto the NIST framework itself, and this is really a comprehensive guide on how to manage risks for particular vessels. It also provides some free-to-use profile templates by vessel type, which an operator could use to help identify and prioritise reducing cyber risks. Next slide, please. Now, the IMO adopted resolution MSc 42898 on the 16th of June 2017, and that's Maritime Cyber Risk Management in Safety Management Systems. And the key sentences from this are that this resolution affirms that an approved safety management system should take into account cyber risk management in accordance with the objectives and functional requirements of the ISM code. And the resolution encourages administrations to ensure that cyber risks are appropriately addressed in safety management systems no later than the first annual verification of the company's document of compliance after the 1st of January 2021. It references the MSc FAL document as high-level recommendations on cyber risk management. And importantly, what does this actually mean to ship owners and ship managers? Well, in practice, at the highest level, a ship must demonstrate to port state control or anyone else who requests it that the vessel has considered the risk from cyber and what it would do in case of an issue. So, for an example, at the moment, what would you do if you had a fire in the engine room? We would have sprinklers, extinguishers, trained crew, CO2. These are the certificates for the extinguishers, the training record of the crew, and so on. So in cyber, this will mean what assets do we have? What would you do if they don't work? What would you do if they were compromised? Who has control? So at a minimum, the vessel would need to identify who is the chief security officer ashore and on board and what assets they have. Now, Fleet Secure Endpoint, which I'll talk about later, can scan the network and have a record of this, and it can also show you how they are protecting those assets and the controls any new devices joining the network. Now, if a vessel doesn't comply, it can be detained and fined. So for IMO 2021, a vessel should have a cyber risk plan which covers OT and IT. And as with the ISO 27001 standard, it states that you must be aware what kind of hardware you have, what kind of software you have, and what's important, what is connected to the network, and how you have protected this. Next slide, please. Now, the IMO MSc FAL document explains at a high level what a vessel needs to protect. However, it doesn't specify it in detail, and it doesn't give you a bullet point list that can be ticked off. So the 5 pillars of the NIST framework, these give you a really good way to structure your measures. And when we talk about our cyber portfolio, we relate the features of this framework to give a head start, which I'll talk more on later. Next slide, please. So whilst IMO 2021 could be viewed as a challenge, as ship owners and managers need to incorporate cyber risk management into their safety management systems, we should be looking at this as a big opportunity and a driver for everyone to really tighten their security measures for a safer maritime sector overall, and perhaps making us a harder target. So I'm going to hand over to Richard now, who's going to have a look at helping you get ready. So over to you, Richard.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, good evening. Okay, let me just on my camera, and I'm going to dive straight into the gist of it, what internal preparation ship managers must do. Stand by. Okay, all right, straight into the key points. The important takeaway some of you want today is that what must ship managers do to gain compliance? So, all right, to me, I summarize up what needs to be done very simply in a few steps here. We need to run a discovery process, all right? In the discovery, you need to figure out on board the IT and the OT systems, what application systems you have on board, basically understand what's being used on board, and then from there derive what is the critical systems. Then you got to start working on the hardening of those critical systems. So make it more resilient, all right? Take steps, come out with workarounds, come out with backup hardware, make sure your backups are good, and also include training and retraining your crew. I think that is also very critical. Then we got to move on to updating. Updating your ISM or SMS manuals. Make sure you have an IT policy there already created there, if not, and include your workaround process, your action steps for critical systems should something happen to your critical systems, what steps the captain and the crew need to do to work around the problem. All right, and then rinse and repeat. Remember, this is not a one-time effort, okay? The technical managers will need to work closely with their fleet IT team to constantly review and improve. To me, this is really a partnership between the technical managers and their IT professionals. All right. Just a minute. All right. Next, more details on discovery. Basically, by discovery, I meant you'd probably need to run a fleet-wide exercise to find out what systems you have on each of your ship, document it down. All right. Find out what is really important. All right, both OT and IT systems. All right, so of course this is a big process. Later, Laurie will be talking about FSE a bit more, so you can identify when how it help you when things are automatically detected when you connect those new systems in. All right, we're not talking over IT system itself, we're talking about OT systems, your navigation, cargo control, loading system, ballast control, tank radars, and all that kind of stuff. All right, then you on the hardware side, you need to know the make, the model, the function, all right, the weak point, the exposed USB, your LAN wiring, all those are possible weak points and basically attack surfaces. Then software, the make and the version of application used on the ship, and basically find out what is truly critical, mean that if that system were to be not available due to a malicious event, a malicious cyber event, or even just normal failure, what is the workaround, the steps that the crew must do to ensure that the ship can still continue to operate safely without danger to the ship, the crew, the cargo, and the environment. Hardening. Okay, so hardening means on the hardware side, is it secured? Is it patched? Any exposed USB or cables? Is it blocked? Is the equipment properly maintained? Is there sufficient supply? Is there sufficient spare part? Your supply chain, is it secure? All right. Software, the usual stuff. Operating systems, is it up to date? Is it application patched to the latest? And I forgot to mention just now, so it's also very good to get external third party to do a penetration test to figure out all the weak point for you. They normally can do a very good job, and it's almost become an SOP for companies to gain compliance. To give you an example, for example, is that, let's say if the loading computer is down on the ship, what is the action step for the captain to do. Whether it doesn't matter at this point whether it's down due to hardware failure or cybersecurity risk, you need to identify that loading computer is a critical system. Should that LPC is down, what is the action for the chief officer to do? Is he supposed to pull out a hard disk from somewhere, an image from somewhere, or is there a backup loading computer on board? So all this workaround, all you need to identify and get it ready. So all the workarounds need to be cleared, and the captain and crew need to understand what to do should a critical system fail. Train and retrain. So crew, both onshore and on ship, to train them on cyber awareness is very important. There's a lot of attacks that started basically in the form of emails, phishing emails, or social engineering attacks. So you need to train your shore staff, your sea staff to be cyber aware, so they are able to handle this common attack approach. And I always like to suggest that you need to train, you need to include cyber drills into your yearly training cycle. Every ship manager is supposed to go through their emergency training, their drills, fire, abandoned ship, grounding, etc. And I think it's a good idea also, and I did that in my previous company. We put cybersecurity drills in as well. So do it yearly and make sure that you record it down. Then, okay, update. So after we identify all the critical system, we identify the workarounds for that. All right, we need to document it down. All right, and basically, I like to say that I like to repeat again that make sure that you have an IT policy in your ISM manual. All right, if not done so, please do so. And then you incorporate all the workarounds into your cyber response plan and make that cyber response plan a subset of your fleet IT policy. The benefit of doing that is that we all know the captains and the crews, they always have to go through the manuals. So by putting the IT policy inside the manual with the cyber response plan and how to conduct themselves should there be a cyber event, we can always know that they will go through their document, they understand the process, they kept themselves up to date. And by putting the IT policy, the cyber response plan to the IT policy, it also forces them to automatically yearly to review that document to incorporate any new changes to the ship. For example, you get a new system, they have to review that. So that whole process become dynamic and much more effective than being a one-time affair. Again, just a bit of a repeat. You need to plan a discovery phase, all right? Understand the critical IT and OT systems you have on the ships, all right? Then harden those systems. All right, get the IT and the technical team, work out what needs to be done to ensure that the critical system have workaround. All right, define the role responsibility, train your crew and your shore staff. All right, prepare the workarounds, update those workarounds into the cyber response plan, insert that into your IT section on your ISM, and then constantly review the systems, especially when you got new hardware that you want to roll out to the ship. For example, you want to roll out a brand new smart monitoring solution or the emission control system or your scrubber systems, those things that interface with computer control systems. Anytime you have a new system, always review and identify the risks again. I'm going to hand this back to Laurie to speak a bit on Fleet Secure. Laurie.
Thanks, Richard. If you can go to the next slide, please. So accelerating digitalization, naturally that brings with it more risk. And we need to consider the applications and the necessary security measures hand in hand, so that we're making sure that we're integrating the response as much as possible to help us ensure that the many benefits of digitalization continue to outweigh the risks. So how do we approach cybersecurity at Inmarsat, and what can we do to help? Naturally, there's different approaches you can take. There's a lot of information and guidance out there, which can get a little bit complicated. So my aim here is to offer a pragmatic approach using our Fleet Secure portfolio to try and give you some tools to make it as simple as possible. Next slide, please, Richard. So let me start by introducing a few key components of the portfolio. And my intention here is not to go into any technical detail, Try and keep it fairly top line and relevant to IMO 2021. The main one I'm going to talk about today is Fleet Secure Endpoint, which, as the name suggests, it protects all endpoints from threats such as from the internet, USB infections, threats created from an infected crew laptop, and it covers all threats, no matter the origin, on all endpoints it's installed on. I'll also mention here crew awareness training, which is a very significant consideration. And a key implication of the nature of this threat is the importance of role people play in any cyber resilience strategy. Many consider people as the weakest part in cybersecurity. So the more we do to raise the knowledge and understanding in our people, the better protected we will be. So there's one easy to use app, which can be operated offline, that was developed by the Marine Learning Alliance. That's now available, and you can drop us an email for more info. And there's also a new crew awareness training module coming to FSE shortly. Next slide, please. So an important point to say is that standard antivirus software on its own is not going to be enough to give you adequate protection or IMO 2021 compliance. Normal antivirus, normally purchased off the shelf, needs constant updating, otherwise it's quickly redundant. And it gives you no understanding of the assets that you've got on board or if they're adequately protected. And today's age, when different forms of malware are being created daily, this is a significant issue, and it's hard to keep up to date with an antivirus alone. Next slide, Richard. So as mentioned in a previous slide, the NIST 5 pillars gives a really good framework to build your cybersecurity plan, and it identifies the areas that need addressing. Fleet Secure Endpoint covers all these NIST pillars, which are mentioned in the IMO guidelines. So you could say that FSE is fully IMO compliant if you use it properly and integrate it into your safety management system. But do bear in mind that the IMO is a recommendation that also requires other steps, such as appointing a responsible person for cyber. And you need to do the work, to document these procedures in the safety manual on board. Next slide, please. Now, there's far more features with FSE than we have time to cover here. So I'm just going to pick out a few examples of how Fleet Secure Endpoint meets the guidelines to support compliance. And first things first, as we've already stressed, to know what to protect, you need to know what you have. So the asset management module enables you to identify all your assets on board, and it demonstrates the protection that you have in place, which in itself is a very good first step in compliance. And the report it generates also gives you something that you can show directly to port authorities or anyone else, demonstrating the measures that you've taken to protect the vessel. And then to protect against cyber events and detect attacks, there's a host of tools that Fleet Secure Endpoint uses. A couple of key ones I'll single out is the ESET endpoint security module, which blocks and prevents cyber attacks, both based on file detections, but also some intelligent behavior analysis. There's botnet protection, shutting down malicious connections, multi-engine scanning, which broadens the detection capabilities by using more than one security vendor signature database. And then one more I'll pick out is the Iris Upload Scanner, which gives the user the option to use cloud scanning and scan files against a multitude of different private antivirus engines. So that's a really powerful feature. Now, the respond and recover functions are important to reduce the impact of any cyber attack and prevent more damage being done. So a key feature to support these functions are the dedicated 24/7 security operations center, which will alert you to what's happening on board and will react to incidents and take action when needed. And also Fleet Secure Endpoint now has a risk assessment module, which enables you to complete the risk assessment process set out in the guidelines all in one package. So in itself, Fleet Secure Endpoint goes a very long way to getting ready and compliant for IMO 2021. Next slide, please, Richard. So I'm going to try and bring to life some of these features now and talk through some real cases to demonstrate how Fleet Secure Endpoint works in action. So this first case is an instance where a Trojan attack on board caused operations to stop. Now, Inmarsat is a virus that is able to intercept and exfiltrate data being transmitted. And it's saved when the user is browsing banking websites, resulting in leakage of sensitive data, a malicious use of the user's banking details. And here it had infected the majority of machines on board and made sure that it was running whenever a PC was started. So Fleet Secure Endpoint was installed. It successfully cleared the virus from the memory on all infected devices. And after the infections were cleaned, the Security Operations Center informed the customer of the infection and its outcome, and then normal operations were able to resume. So how did it do that? Well, the security modules used were the Advanced Memory Scanner, which it used to detect Inmarsat in memory, terminating and blocking it from running again. And it used the heuristic intrusion prevention system to prevent the malicious code that was being executed and stopping it. Next one, please, Richard. Now, this vessel was using another security package when it was hit by a multitude of infections, such as Trojans, worms, and data exfiltration viruses. And these were never detected by the cybersecurity software that it had running at the time. So the operator decided to install Fleet Secure Endpoint as part of a trial. And during the installation, our engineer found 79 infections that had not been detected. These infections included a coin miner Trojan, which uses system resources to mine cryptocurrency for the distributor of the Trojan, and another Trojan that's capable of downloading and executing other malicious code. So Fleet Secure Endpoint, once it was installed, it successfully cleared all infections, which the previous software wasn't able to find. And after they were cleaned, the Security Operations Center informed the customer of the outcome. And the modules it used to do this were the HTTP filter to detect the users on board unknowingly visiting websites serving malicious code. It dropped the connection and it informed the user accordingly. And it used its Outlook email filter to filter infected attachments, preventing further infections. Okay, so I'm going to hand back over to Richard now, who's going to talk more about next steps and actions that you can take.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, probably the mute button. Okay, so back to what the ship manager needs to do. Again, I just want to repeat again, training the crew is important. Now with Fleet Secure Endpoint, there's a cyber awareness training module included. And I find this, I mean, as a former ship manager, I find that this is very useful. It basically allowed the crew to be trained on board using their own devices. All right, they can connect to the internet through our Crew Express or our FX solution, get to the website, download, and they can immediately get have a clear cyber awareness training. And the training can be recorded. Captain on board can use that and make sure that every one of the joiners, new joiners, example, get trained up, goes through a cyber awareness training. And then when the auditor come on board, maybe next year, he can immediately show that, okay, all his complement has been trained or went going through the training or will go through the training. So these are the kind auditors want to see. The Fleet Secure Cyber Awareness Training module is designed for this kind of purpose. Get your crew trained up immediately, make sure they retain the record, captain can show to the auditors. And this can, the crew can also go through a repeat training anytime down, maybe a year down. We call this refresher training. So very useful, very ideal, suitable for the shipping industry. Next, actions to be taken. All right, like what Laurie mentioned before, appoint a person on board to take ownership on cybersecurity. So during the height of the piracy, the industry like to appoint somebody as the chief security officer. So in this particular case, appoint somebody on the ship to take charge, take ownership of the cybersecurity plan. All right, refer and integrate that together with your ISM manual, your cyber response plan in your IT policy. All right, harden the cyber systems on the ship. All right, get the Fleet Secure Endpoint. All right, you can get a free no commitment 1-month trial. Contact your Inmarsat's sales manager. You need to remove the existing antivirus because having multiple antivirus on board is not good. Download the installer. All right, set up a dashboard, manage those reports. The dashboard is very useful, allow you to see what's going on, increase your situation awareness, be mindful of what's going on the ship. The alerts will be able to notify that. Access the crew training module, get everybody trained up to speed, and then every year make sure that you go through make sure the crew go through the cyber awareness training, and Fleet Secure Endpoint will share threat intelligence. This is something that auditors also would like to know, because auditors like to know whether the Fleet IT manager, are they sharing common threat intelligence to the masters? I went through that kind of questions before, something that I'm very sure the auditors will be asking. Next. Okay. Basically, getting your fleet cyber ready, to me, is basically a partnership between the technical and IT management in your company. All right. Technical managers need to partner and empower your fleet IT teams. All right. The IT guys, they know how to handle this kind of stuff. All right. They know what is best practice. All right. You need to work with them to harden the ship's IT and OT setup. IT professionals need to truly understand what the shipping operations is all about. Get on a ship, observe and understand what's going on, see how your applications is being used on board, all right? Familiarize yourself with the OT systems used by the ship, navigation, cargo control, engine control. Identify those systems, all right? And basically, you got to know how your customers is working. And then technical and IT, then together, partnering together will be able, along with tools that Inmarsat can provide, Fleet Secure Endpoint, will allow you to get, again, your compliance. The Fleet Express Advantage. Okay, so reliable connectivity, reliable continuous connectivity is important. All right, it helps in vessel operations. All right, nowadays vessel operations connectivity is very critical. Charts, weather, news, telemetry, performance monitoring, eventually emission monitoring, and all this will require connectivity. So it also will help you enable your IT systems on board to be updated, patched. I see more and more Windows Update Server being rolled out onto the ships. It allowed you to get updates from Fleet Secure Endpoint and basically let you know what's going on the ships. So that is it from me for now. Mark?
Great, thank you very much, Richard, and thanks again, Laurie, for obviously giving us an overview of the IMO 2021 regulations and also the NIST framework, which is important to implement. Okay, so we're going to now go over to the panel discussion. And we have, so actually the first question, Laurie, is which is coming from the audience, is you know, are those cases that you presented there, are they real? So I'll let you answer that one first, and then we'll line up another question for you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, they certainly are real. All those cases are. I won't reveal the you know, the details of the customer or anything like that for, you know, for security purposes and things. But yeah, they're real cases. We have lots more examples as well of how it's really doing its job. So yes, it really does work.
Good. Okay. So Laurie, why don't we another question for you? I mean, do you just want to talk about what's the impact on data usage and connectivity with a solution like Fleet Secure Endpoint?
So the impact on data, I mean, you have some control over it. It depends how frequently you configure it for updates. So if you want to take it to a minimum, you could work with as little as 5 megabytes a month for just doing a weekly update. But it depends on what your you know, your SATCOM solution is. So if you have an unlimited plan like Fleet Express, then you know, you would configure it to update as often as it's available to make it more secure. But the amount of data that it uses for those updates is pretty minimal, so it's not going to impact your business operations.
Okay. Richard, a question for you. You mentioned and you took us through cybersecurity awareness, but is crew training, necessary under IMO 2021? I mean, and also what steps should be taken as well to ensure the crew is trained and as up to date as possible when it comes to cybersecurity?
I think crew training is very important because most of the risks we see, the one cited by Laurie and the one we recently saw hitting the other shipping companies, the last one was a container, and we cannot forget the big one in 2017. A lot of it is all started off with the phishing emails. So that's how the malicious actors can gain access to your network, by getting your crew or getting your shore staff to click on a malicious email link. Once you click on the link, they can run application, and from there they secure a beachhead into your network, and from there they can go horizontally to other systems. So crew training, especially on phishing emails, spear phishing, social engineering attacks, these are very critical. You got to understand also that engineers masquerading as owners sent technicians to ships. Those are also a key threat that I was very concerned about, because as a manager at that time, I have ships sailing all over the world, and they go through ports that off the beaten track, terminals not near the cities or somewhere far away. Basically, you have crew, and then you don't want somebody masquerading as a, look, I'm a technician, IT technician, your head office sent me on board. I'm here to update your computer systems. So we need to train the ship managers, need to train their captains, their crews to be aware of such threats, phishing emails, social engineering attacks, somebody masquerading as somebody else, because these are how the malicious actor will gain access to the ship. So training, yes, very important.
And just as an extension to that, Laurie, what about, and it's certainly a question that I've heard before as well, what about how far does IMO extend to shoreside staff and shoreside servers? Does it cover those, or is it just very much based around what's happening on board the vessel?
Well, the IMO 2021 requirement itself doesn't cover onshore staff or servers. That's focused on vessels. However, every company operating vessels have shoreside infrastructure, vessel-side infrastructure, and whilst you need to meet the IMO regulations and compliance, more importantly, you also need to protect yourself against the very real cyber threat. And I think, as Richard said, a significant part of that is crew and your staff. So I think as you are doing taking the measures to protect your vessels, you can also further harden that protection by making sure that shoreside you are tight as well. And whether that's through crew training and making sure that all your crew are fully aware and alert to look out for phishing emails, social engineering attacks, these things. That's how a lot of these threats gain a foothold in the first place, be it shoreside or on board, is via your people. So it's absolutely vital to make sure, as Richard said, that it's deeply entrenched in your culture, that everybody's looking out for it, both shoreside and on vessels, and that will just give you a much harder sort of set of measures for protecting yourself. No, IMO 2021 doesn't require action on shoreside as such. However, clearly you need to take those measures anyway.
Okay, so Richard, another question that's come in, and I guess it's also relevant given the COVID pandemic and the fact that travel has been severely restricted. Travel both from a crew change perspective, but also travel for people going onto the vessel. So the question really is around, are we going to see less vessel visits by IT teams, and how is that going to develop? What's the trend in that in the next couple of years? So, and how does that impact obviously cybersecurity as well? Can these cybersecurity solutions be managed remotely?
For me, even before COVID-19, I see that most IT departments, most ship managers are keen to reduce visitation by technical teams to the ship. So yes, I would see a lot less reduction on visitation to fix issues. There might be health visit. That means teams might just visit the ship when the ship is nearby, for example. But I would see operationally a lot of the operations, especially if you use, for example, Inmarsat FX internet connection, we already are able to provide and ensure IT operations can be done remotely. So that means, for example, after a busy installation phase on the ship during delivery, most of the equipment can survive for the next 3 years, 4 years before she goes to dry dock. IT teams can remote control the systems. They should not need to visit the ship. They can remote install, they can remote patch, remote troubleshoot. All right. And if the ship manager can set up the systems in a way, work closely with your IT teams, set up in a way you can have redundancy, backup equipments, it is well within the target. You do not need to send visitation by repair engineers to the ship. You can manage it remotely. Have a good IT policy, have a good team, empower them, design a good resilient system, have a good internet connection. Inmarsat FX is a good choice, and you can literally remote operate your IT on your fleet.
Okay, thanks for that, Richard. And just to add, I mean, from a we saw the 900% figure in terms of 900% increase in cyber attacks over the last 3 years. Obviously, from a digitalization perspective, we know from the trends that we're seeing in data usage, particularly with our high-speed service Fleet Express, that volumes are really increasing. And I mean, they were doubling before COVID. They were doubling on average across the average vessel. Every 8 months. It's certainly COVID has accelerated that, and it's probably going to be faster when we start to look at the data trends. With all this, Laurie, and a question for you, do ship owners, do they have the option to do nothing here, or do they have to, what happens if they do nothing? And again, and I think you mentioned it in your presentation as well, is antivirus enough? Very simple and basic steps. Is that enough to kind of comply to the IMO 2021 regulation?
Okay, so first of all, is it an option to do nothing? I would certainly say no. If you do nothing, then you won't. If you do, the do nothing option suggests that you're not putting cyber into your safety management system on board, and therefore you wouldn't comply to IMO 2021, and you run the risk of your vessel being detained or fined for not taking part in that. So you certainly need to take action. You need to do something, and fundamentally, you have to build your response to cyber, your cyber risk management. You have to build that into your safety management system. Is antivirus enough? I would argue no. This isn't a definitive answer because it isn't necessarily that you have to have a certain software solution or IT solution or OT solution to give you compliance. It's how you manage the threats, and there's a whole host of tools out there which you can use to demonstrate how you are protecting yourself from the threats. So antivirus is a tool that you can use. However, I would argue that it's not enough on its own to give you adequate protection. And certainly where we've seen vessels, as I showed in the case studies, where we've gone and installed Fleet Secure Endpoint, it's picked up a whole host of infections that were already there, where there had been antivirus and even other packages on board operating already that hadn't picked them up. So you need to make sure that whatever solution you're using is a good solution that's robust, and also that it's installed correctly. That's one part of it. But you have to build that into your safety management system. You have to identify your assets, like we said before, and then work to protect them and demonstrate how you're protecting them. So those are the sorts of measures. Do nothing is not an option. You have to act. And I would suggest, finding a good package that's more than just antivirus, that gives you a much more robust set of protection measures, but also helps you manage that threat. And it's more about management there.
Okay, thank you for that, Laurie. And another question, and I'll pick up on that one. It was a question about, does this work across multiple satellite communications? Obviously, what we're talking at the moment, our Fleet Secure portfolio, that is just working with our Fleet Express and our high speed service. So the answer to that is no. This is this works with our solutions and our connectivity solutions as well. Okay, I guess my final question would be, cybersecurity, obviously at the moment with the IMO regulations and everything, and obviously Laurie, you've just said about that it isn't an option just to do nothing, but with the regulations coming in, in 5, perhaps 10 years time, where do you think cybersecurity will be? Is it a kind of an ever morphing issue that everybody will have to deal with and continue to update, or does the IMO 2021 regulations, does that put the issue to bed, and as long as people are compliant, then that's fine? So really it's kind of looking into the future. Cybersecurity, is it an issue that's going to go away with the regulations that are coming in, or will it be a continuous kind of battle as threats evolve, etc.? So why don't you both have a stab at answering that? So Laurie, why don't you start?
Okay. Well, firstly, I think it's clearly not going to go away. And I think, you can see the trend in the news where cyber threats are increasing and increasing. And they're not just increasing in volume, but they're increasing in complexity, sophistication. And it's like any form of warfare, it evolves. As your protection measures improve and evolve, so does the threat. There's a tit for tat nature in this. So it is going to continue to evolve, no doubt. I find it highly unlikely that we're going to be able to eradicate it. Now, IMO 2021 is about managing the threats, how you manage the risk, how you manage your systems. So, and I think a big part of that is the review, the improve, that continuous improvement phase in any quality management system. So I think that's where you need to continue to evaluate the threats. You need to work with your suppliers, with your vendors, with your customers, and you need to collaborate across the industry to keep track of how the threat is evolving, learn best practice from other people and from other people's experience, and then adapt your own measures to make sure that you're keeping a sort of a robust, hard security system in place. And IMO is really about that how you're managing that risk, your systems that are there, so that to give you that space and to give you that process for continually updating and improving your security measures. So I think it's going to be a threat that's going to just keep evolving and evolving and getting ever more sophisticated. And we need to make sure that we evolve ourselves, that we continuously improve to tackle those threats.
Yeah, my views are the same. Yeah, I think that the threats will not go away, but it will evolve. Like what Laurie mentioned, this is basically an attack and defense posture. So you improve your defenses, the malicious actors will evolve their attack profile. Basically, it will be ongoing changes. Right now, we see a lot of I see a lot of spear phishing, social engineering attacks. Maybe in the future will change. Ship operators, ship managers could jolly well take this IMO 2021 as a good chance to level up their game. All right, really integrate with their IT team, work closely with them, harden up their defenses, get ready for the ever-evolving threats. Now, the industry is modernizing, they are digitizing. There's a lot of smart ship solution coming online. There's a lot more telemetry being proposed, emission control, performance monitoring, all this. All this will require IT solutions. All right. So if I'm a malicious operator, I will continue to see how else can we look for weak point in this kind of system. Ship managers should not despair. They should work with the IT guys, all right, and figure out how to defend against this kind of emerging threats. So they need to stay in touch. The training that we mentioned, cyber awareness training, is important. Everybody should go through that. They need to be aware. FSE also give very good threat intelligence update, all right, and basically to understand the playing field that they are working on, what are the bad guys doing, and what they need to do with IT teams to defend the fleet from those malicious actors.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Richard. So thank you for all your questions. There was a number coming in from the audience, so that's fantastic. I hope that the presentation and then the subsequent panel discussion has answered a lot of questions around IMO 2021 and what you should be doing. We will be following up. All attendees of this will get the presentations. They will also get our new white paper on IMO 2021. And I hope that kind of answers all questions. But of course, please feel free to contact us here at Inmarsat, and we'd be more than helpful to kind of advise and kind of really help you kind of take the new regulations and help with compliance. So I think that all I need to do now is thank both my speakers. Thank you very much, Laurie. Thanks, Richard, for giving the views and obviously also explaining the kind of the real life cases that are occurring and have occurred over the last year in what we've seen. So thank you very much to that, and also thank you very much to the APM organisers for allowing us to put on this presentation. So for now, I will hand back to Jia Young, who will close the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. So that's a really interesting session. Thank you so much, Mark, Laurie, and Richard, for the insightful sharing. Now, for our audience, do take note that a recording of this session will be available on demand after the show. For those who are keen on having a hard copy of the presentation, do take note that you will be redirected to the Inmarsat webpage where a download link is available. Once again, thank you and have a pleasant day ahead.